Hey guys, I'm Mark Allen, BH Spring Solutions LLC, and we're just moving into fall 2019. And I wanted to share with you a few things. The title of this video might be "Don't Shoot Your High Power or 1911 or CZ75 or Makarov or Walther PPK until you've watched this video." And what caused this video to be made is an increasing number of customer consultations that we've done over the phone, over email, with our friends, BH veterans, folks coming to us the first time. And one thing that we've seen trending, if you will, and I suspect that this is because BH Spring Solutions has moved past some of our flagship products like the BH Spring Solutions optimized spring kits for several different models of handguns, and now we're introducing things like advanced barrels and buffering recoil spring guide rods and cool stuff like fast safety or safety fast shooting system and drop-in manual safeties for Glock pistols and a really great variety of products that we have now. And basically what I think has started to happen is we have a lot of new friends coming to us, and they're at different stages than a lot of our old clientele, our older friends that have essentially been ordering things from us intermittently for 5 years now and 4 years now. And here's how these conversations increasingly are going is we get a call and it's about one thing, but then there's a question about something else, and it's a function problem or a extraction problem or some other function issue or something. And we're being asked, what do you think is the remedy or the solution for this or whatever. And for a while, when these kinds of calls started increasing, there was something inside me that just assumed I'm talking to one of our customers and they're using BH Spring Solutions springs, and I've learned to stop assuming that. So that's what this video is about. Is I'm going to give you the best explanation, the real life example, why this is so important, what I'm talking with you about today. Increasingly, when I ask folks, well, what springs are in your high power or whatever it is, well, they're the original springs, and this is like a 1972 high power. So calculate how old those springs are. Or another one more common, well, I've got a BH Spring Solutions extractor spring and a Wolf recoil spring and somebody else's some other spring, and it's kind of this sort of hodgepodge. And until you start to really understand why we went into business the way that we did, and our very first products being complete spring kits in our case for the Browning high power models and the clones and other pistols like the Arcus 98, which is inspired by the high power double action single action pistol. Anyway, we went into business and we didn't offer just recoil springs and just 3 packs of extractors or whatever it is. We went into business offering complete spring kits, and we have never had to walk back anything that we ever did in the way of complete spring kit products for customers. And we're really not walking back anything that we're doing right now, but just to give you as an example what we're seeing here. I want to take this back to the very, very bare basics, and that is, this is my own personal carry high power of 29 years. I'll tell you a little bit more about it here in just a few minutes, but it is confirmed clear, safe, and there's no ammunition here within reach. So in the early 2000s, I started reading on the internet about the Browning High Power, and I think a lot of Stephen Camp's material, in fact. And I decided, based on what I read, that it was probably time that I changed the recoil spring. And I had noticed accuracy when I would be shooting didn't seem to be what it once was, and that's a kind of a symptom of a tired recoil spring. I had learned, and this, I'll have to remind you, is at a stage in time that this was well before BH Spring Solutions, and I was very, very much learning kind of what this is all about at that time. So I found a company and I ordered a recoil spring, and I got it in the mail, and I installed that recoil spring, and it came with another spring which said extra power firing pin spring, and I hadn't ordered it, it just kind of was included with the recoil spring, so I figured, well, I mean, that must be another spring that is important to change out when you change out the recoil spring, which is actually not true, but I assumed it was, since that was kind of what was in the package. So I went online and I found out how to change the firing pin spring, changed it out, and wow, was that ever much stronger than the one I had in there before, so I felt pretty good about that. Now, this is a true story. We live out, our nearest neighbor is a half a mile. We're out in a rural area, and occasionally we have varmint problems of one strain or another, and groundhogs being the worst, coyotes are, nobody really quite knows, and possums and raccoons and things, and we have other small animals, cats and a dog. And some of these animals are not compatible with our domestic animals. So there's sometimes that I actually put my high power to a bona fide use as a varmint exterminator. So one night, now this is the rest of that story. I had installed that recoil spring, I had installed that firing pin spring, done nothing else to the pistol. I had shot it, and accuracy really did get better. And so anyway, I go out one night and there is a varmint. And this varmint is not running. And this varmint seems to be a varmint that is going to decide to hold its ground, and it's on my ground. And so I reached in my waist and got my high power out. I did not have SFS on it at the time. I had done nothing to this handgun at that point, except what I've just told you. And I pulled the safety off, because I carried, of course, cocked and locked, and raised the pistol to the target, and I pulled the trigger, and it went click. And there was no boom. And to make a long story short about how that finished, cocked the hammer, pulled the trigger again, and it fired. But my point in this is this. Now, for those of you who don't understand what just happened here, at this time, this is about a 21, 22-year-old high-power pistol. I've never done anything to it. The hammer spring, that's the spring that drives the hammer into the firing pin. That hammer spring was 22 years old. I had just put in a heavy, extra heavy firing pin spring, and this hammer spring must overcome the resistance of that firing pin spring, and if it cannot, then the pistol may not fire. What I had happen was called a light primer strike. It failed to fire. The mainspring did not have enough life left to it to overcome that heavy firing pin spring that I had installed. And I had induced a malfunction. Unknowingly, I had done that by not replacing all the springs in my handgun at the same time. And from that day forward, I never forgot that, obviously, because of course the worst case scenario there is, this is my defensive handgun. I've never had a malfunction with it ever at that stage. And if I was in a situation where I needed a firearm to stop an attack, and seconds mattered, and I were to have deployed that firearm and it went click at the worst possible time for it to go click. The implications of that malfunction that I had induced would be potentially very tragic. So I have never forgotten that. And when my partner and I were putting together our spring kits, that's one of the things that was always on our mind, is we always wanted to make sure we were putting out a product that, if it was used as it's packaged for that particular model, you will not be causing problems. You'll be potentially correcting problems and solving problems, but you won't be causing problems like I had done when I unknowingly just installed that heavier firing pin spring. At that stage, I didn't know that that firing pin spring drove the firing pin into the primer or kept the firing pin from going into the primer. So I really didn't know, and I really didn't understand. And that is just one of potentially an infinite number of examples that could be given for how changing out a spring here and a spring there and this one and that one. BH Spring Solutions springs have been designed and they're made to work in your model of handgun harmoniously with each other. You might think of them as synchronized springs, so to say. Everything in your handgun that moves is controlled and regulated by a spring. Springs don't last forever. Most are compressed when they're installed. They wear themselves out just because they're installed. They're trying to get themselves back to their relaxed length. And they cannot exert energy forever, and they do not. So understanding that is really the importance and the reason when you go to bhspringsolutions.com and you look at all those spring kits that this company has, and it is a lot. Each one was made to be optimal for a particular handgun, for a particular type of user with certain characteristics, shooting certain ammunition. And we have put together the variety that we have to hopefully serve as many shooters as we can with a one-kit solution. Because if you install optimal springs that are controlling every moving part in that handgun, you can then enable optimal function. Buffering recoil spring guide rods, they're a great thing. Excellent barrels are a great thing. Excellent parts are a great thing. And excellent operating systems are a great thing. But we cannot stress enough the importance of having complete BH Spring Solution springs installed in your handgun, and that means all the way around. And try to adhere to our suggestion of change out your springs every 5 years to 5,000 rounds as a best practices approach. In order to be able to do that, some of our other flagship items are our Master's Tools Kit for high power, which is made up of the Armorer's Tools Kit and the Master's Pin Punch Tools Kit. These give you every tool, every pin punch that you need to disassemble every disassembly point in the high power pistol. Now, having said that, we do want to also say that this video is being primarily made for gunsmiths, pistol smiths, and other qualified individuals. So if you are not qualified to be making the spring changes that we're talking about here, find somebody who is, show them this video, show them our other tutorial videos, show them the packaging material that comes with all of our spring kits that talks about possible setups and usage and slide velocity synchronization. One of our other early flagship items, our basic and deluxe version of our polishing kit, provides you everything that you need to polish all metal to metal mating surfaces in your handgun when you've taken something out. All metal parts that relate or pivot or turn or move are better when they're polished. They always work better, crisper, cleaner, more precise, and that polishing kit has just an infinite number of different uses. We have complete spring kits that have been designed and tested through thousands and thousands of rounds of testing for 1911 commanders, 1911 officers, every flavor of high power pistol, including the Tissos Regent BR9, that we believe has ever been made. CZ75, folks. Interesting thing that I was told in August at a competitive pistol competition in Bulgaria. I got to meet the gentleman who is the champion in Serbia. He uses BH Spring Solution springs, and he was telling us that he's been running the same springs for 30,000 rounds now, apparently a year and a half or so. This guy shoots a lot, and I got a chance to meet him. And again, it was this whole idea of how things synchronize well when they're made to work well together, and BH Spring Solution springs are made for that. CZ75 full size, compact, Makarov pistol owners. And one more thing I wanted to show you. This is kind of a newer item, but it's a great basics kind of an item. It's our essential service tools kit. Comes with needle nose pliers, ceramic tweezers, and a multi-function magnifier, so you can really look at parts and see details. It's just an indispensable little tool. It's also got, flashlight on it and everything. But we wanted to talk about this. This is kind of a bringing things back to basics video a little bit, but we wanted to share it with you. It seems like it's a great time for it. Thanks for watching. I'm Mark Allen, BH Spring Solutions.